What's up, everybody? James Gore. I'm here with Alma Bowen, a dear friend and amazing community leader. We're on our little show that we call Explore with Gore. I want to thank Keith, who's running the show back here. I'll give him a shout out because he's always doing it, and we don't always acknowledge the one who really runs this thing, sets it up, and delivers it. But today's a special day, right? For a couple different reasons. First of all, Sonoma County Fair opens up, and you are a Fair Board appointee, and you are going tonight to the opening, and Sonoma County is going to open up and have this amazing week of activities and fun and family, right?
Absolutely. I invite everybody to come. There is literally something for everybody.
Yeah.
There are so many activities. We have schedules all over the place. And once you arrive at the fair, look at the schedule, plan out your day. I guarantee you and your family will have a great time there.
Gosh.
So much to look at.
Well, you epitomize service and public service to me and leadership in that regard. And what we're going to talk a little bit about today and then get heavy into is the world of resilience. So people ask me sometimes, well, what does resilience really mean? If you look it up in the dictionary, you talk about it's like you can take a punch and get back up and you can keep moving forward. But a lot of what we've done since our big catastrophic wildfires and our journey through all of those and COVID and our floods and just normal everyday everythings, the chaos of the world, is that resilience is really about building better systems. It's about managing risk before you get smacked in the face, in another way too. And you have such a unique perspective because you and I met after the Tubbs, Nuns, and Pocket Fire, called the Sonoma Complex fires. And we talk a lot about the Tubbs fire. We're coming up on the 9-year anniversary.
Wow.
And so moving into our 10th year post. And you were a 911 dispatcher that night. And you were the individual, one of those people who were receiving thousands of calls a minute. And ultimately the 911 system got oversubscribed and crashed in many ways because people weren't just calling for help, they were calling for information. And really, soon afterwards, you changed the idea of you being even though you're a proactive person as a 911 dispatcher and saving people, but as being the one who received the calls, to being the person who had a calling to go out into the community and build resilience from the ground up instead of waiting for people to dial those 3 numbers. And I think that's a beautiful testimony to the calling of the world, to also not just being the person who was in a position, but taking that feeling and turning it. So can you talk to me and all of us a little bit about that night and what you experienced? And then we'll swing into the story of your entrepreneurialism and recovery and community resilience.
That night became a catalyst. I was over 18 years in as a 911 dispatcher, communication training officer, lead dispatcher, all of that. I was actually supposed to be off that night. I was off that night, and I received a text to come in because they needed help. The system had already begun getting inundated, and as a lead and a training officer, I had the duty to go in. And so I showed up there, and honestly, I didn't know what was happening yet. None of us really understood what we were facing quite at that time. That message came through at 10 p.m., so we were starting to know that there was a lot of fires, but we had no idea the magnitude of what was going to happen. But driving to the dispatch center that night, I had a feeling. I had something inside the core of my being and my heart that knew that this was going to mark somehow the before and after. It somehow. And so driving there already, I had a sense that something was happening. I clocked in, and the rest is history. Jumped into a seat and was just taking call after call after call. Within an hour, we were out of resources to send, not because we didn't want to, but because systems are not built for disaster times. They're built for emergencies, and there's a distinct difference between the two situations. And so for the first time in over 18 years, I heard myself and my coworkers telling community members, I'm sorry, we have nobody to send you.
Oh, gosh.
Which is a sentence we had never even toyed with. We'd never said that. But the reality was that we needed people to understand that they were going to have to be their own responders. That in times of disasters, there aren't going to be enough responders. That's just not the way systems are built. And so through that initial night, I think we all operated in a way that we had to think on our feet. We didn't have protocols in place for what to do. There were literally no protocols we could follow. It's a very protocol-driven industry, 911. You follow protocols. You make sure you're doing, all the
Yeah,
things.
you're not just riffing. You're not
You're
just
not winging
you
it.
go up and you're
Yeah.
also working with a manual. It's like somebody
Exactly.
calls with this issue. I go to this page.
Yes.
You have your internal training, but it meshes with that protocol, right?
There's like a flow chart, and as you go, you're with the training, you make sure you're asking the right things, listening, and you're going to these different directives, so to speak. We didn't have that. And so at a certain point, we're all doing our best to figure out how to manage this, how to manage the calls coming in, every single line, no matter whether it was the urgent or non-urgent bank. With 911, once the urgent banks get filled, it just bleeds over to the rest of the banks. Every single line was lit up.
Yeah.
I'd never seen that in over 18 years. And as soon as you answered a line and hung it up, another line was in your ear because it's an automatic answer. So for hours.
What were people asking you?
Is there a fight? I mean, we got everything from, it was crazy because the gamut of calls that you got, until you answer, you don't know what you're going to have. So I got calls where I would answer the call and they would go, I smell smoke. Is there a fire? I mean, that, like, they're just wondering if there's a fire, to, oh my God, my house is completely surrounded in fire. What do I do? And so you had everything from people just needing information to people's lives and property being in danger in that moment.
And you operate in that sphere of, as you say, protocol and other things, in a system of triage as well, right?
Exactly.
So the whole thing is like, you call 911 and it says, is this a life-threatening emergency? And if you say yes, it goes to a certain set of operators. And if it doesn't, then it goes, instead of going to the police or in terms of your health, it switches to a different system. But at this point, you're so overwhelmed in the 911 system because people are trying to understand what the hell is going on.
Exactly.
And let's be real. This isn't about the failure of the 911 system that night. That is the failure of the community-wide systems. That's the failure of the county and its Department of Emergency Management. It's a failure of not getting proactive information out. It's about a lack of preparedness for 20 plus years as we were in droughts and we were, building up to this moment where these fires were coming through. It's everything. And I'll say, I want to state something and kind of talk to you about this and then come back to the process, because you've been such a vital organization, individual, leader, servant of how we've gotten here. So, I look back at those times and I say we were caught on our heels in all regards.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And even though we had emergency documents that said we're going to have a fire in this area. Yeah, sure. It's going to happen again. It happened in the past in the 60s. It happens again. If we get these crazy winds, it's going to go. Right. But at the same time, if I look at where we're at now is with my work with around the country and with resilient communities and others, is we're top tier.
Yes.
We are top tier. We have taken being on our heels and said never again. And that does not mean never again a fire or being impacted. It means never again getting caught on our heels. And we are a top tier systematic and community organizations active in disasters, and the work that you're doing each and every day in schools and with elderly and with individuals and bilingual. And I want to know from you. So you left work at some point, like 12 hours later, and what happened in between that and when you came up and talked to me and you said, I have a plan and I want you to jump on board with me?
It was it's this window where that night I came in. I thought I'd go home in a couple hours. I didn't go home till the next day. At some point, many hours later, I drove through Coffee Park to try to get through Windsor because the freeway was closed and it looked like a war zone. And I remember thinking, I took all these calls, but I never imagined this is what it actually looked like out here. And then for the next 28 days, a lot of our dispatchers were out on mental health, or they'd lost their home, or they were evacuated. So we had a very small staff. So I worked out of 30 days, I worked like 28 of those days. I didn't have time to process any of it. And what happened to me when it really hit me and became the catalyst to me giving up a career which I loved serving the community as a dispatcher, was about a month later, they opened the overpass on Mendocino Avenue for the first time. And so I'd been driving to work, going all the way around, and I had not seen Journeys in Mobile Home Park. So that was my first time. I took many calls from that park that night, both from residents trying to get help and their family members looking for them because they didn't have a plan. And so the family members were calling 911 trying to figure out what was going on.
No.
And for the first time, I laid eyes on what it looked like. And I had for myself my first complete almost like breakdown where I allowed myself the emotions. And I sat in the parking lot and I called my supervisor and I said, I need a couple minutes. And then I processed that, went into work, but that became the catalyst because I felt a sense of responsibility as names were published of people that passed away during that fire. The dispatch center, we held our collective breaths knowing that we were the last ones to speak to many of those people that passed away. And I felt both. I wanted to honor those that had lost their life. And I felt a sense of responsibility to the community that this would not happen again. Like you said, we can't prevent disasters, but we can change and work on systems so when they happen, things work as they should in a different way and the community's better prepared. Yeah. So that day became the catalyst. I went home that day and that's where I spoke with my husband and the wheel started from that point. But that was the turning point for me.
So you have this idea that forms in your head that says, I'm not going to be the reactive side. I'm going to be the proactive side. I'm going to go build resilience in our community. I'm going to take everything I've learned in all my training. And I'm going to give up a 20-year career and I'm going to create a nonprofit and I'm going to go into communities and help not big systems. This is what I love about your work, but as much as you're advising on policies and looking at legislation and advising on big programs and things that need to improve, you're also like, I'm going to do it person by person. Yes. I'm going to be the one who goes and helps everybody understand that resilience is in your own world. And we talked about this a lot of times after our fires was to build a resilient community, we had to also let people know that no matter how good we are at improving the systems that support them, is that it really is owned by them. And that, as our friend Marshall Tuberville says to a community, is even with all the additional money we put into fire, he's like, when you need me most, I'm probably not going to be there. So I'm going to need you to have a go bag. I'm going to need you to have a plan. I'm going to need you to have situations. There's another part of this that is about people who English is a second language, and you are bilingual, and your organization is called Nuestra Comunidad. Can you tell us about Nuestra Comunidad and what you envisioned, and then what you've created?
From the beginning, so that was the catalyst, that moment. But for years, I had this idea stirring in my belly.
Okay.
You know, that there wasn't a lot of outreach around the 911 system, and that certain community members, especially our immigrant communities that came from places that didn't have 911, didn't know how to use the system, didn't trust the system, didn't feel safe making that call. And I saw how they could affect the outcome.
And this is outside of disasters.
And this is outside
this is just,
everyday
you're
emergency.
Like, la gente en la comunidad no me llama.
No,
like
they tienen miedo. They're afraid.
They're afraid to call 911 system.
Yes.
They don't want to.
Yes, and I recognized that. And I also had the privilege for a while. I was a 911 dispatcher, and I worked as a medical interpreter at Santa Rosa Memorial per diem, just a couple days a month to cover shifts. So I got to see the other side. I got to see those families that were Spanish speakers. So that's why I was assisting with their care. And sometimes I would recognize just by the situation that these were people that had called 911. And then I heard from them personally that I didn't call because I was afraid. I didn't know that they had interpretation lines. I waited till my family came home. These are people that had strokes and waited 6 hours to get help because they were too afraid to call 911. Yeah. And so that I already knew there was a need on the 911 side for education. After the fire, I thought, there's enough here for me to get the work started. I want to talk.
And also, if you waste a disaster, then you dishonor those who have lost so much.
Absolutely.
That's the way I saw it. There's this quote that is never waste a crisis, never waste a disaster. And it's oftentimes used by leaders in politics and things like, here's how we can do dramatic changes. And I believe that there's a reason, and it's because there's enough of a disruption in the system that you should, but it's not just being opportunistic. It's about honoring that heat that is in your community, and that outrage, because there was a lot of people outraged. They were outraged that 911 failed and that they were on hold. They were outraged that we as the county had not sent out alert and warning systems and evacuated areas beforehand. They were frustrated that they didn't have good information on the back end, and we all had to deliver, but everybody figured out a different way to do that. And you risked a lot. You gave up a career and you started an organization. And I'll never forget 2 meetings with you, and we won't go too deep into it, but one is I was taking a needed day off, and I was swimming with my kids at the pool, and public pool where we go to a gym, and you came up to me and said, I need to talk to you. And then when we set up a meeting, I could tell you had something magic, but then when we sat, you and Darnell, your husband and co-founder and co-leader of your organization, you sat down, and I have a lot of people who pitch ideas, but I don't have a lot where I come out like inspired, that because a lot of people try to give me their problem and their solution and tell me to lead it. Whereas what you did is you came in and you said, basically, I know what I'm doing. This is what's needed. We need to do it. We're the ones to do it. And we need help to just identify where do we point. And at first I was kind of, and then we got into it. We started just connecting you to people. And the thing that I admired is every person we connected you to, you connected to that person, and then more, and you kept coming back. And so here we are. Tell me, where are you now? So you envisioned this organization, and where is Nuestra Comunidad now?
Nuestra Comunidad has really...
Which means, first of all...
our community.
Yeah.
And, when I went to name it, and I like to just talk about this part of it because people ask a lot, why did you name it that? And it's because of who I am. Yeah. I'm a Latina from Mexico. I came here as a child. United States is my home. Sonoma County is my home. I've grown up here. But I wanted the organization to reflect, one, who I am in my heart, because I think it reflects my heart. But I also wanted community members to understand that everybody was a part of this. And I felt that by naming it Nuestra Comunidad, that the community would understand. And it's not exclusive at anybody. It's meant to be inclusive of all people. And so, Nuestra Comunidad has really... we've sunk into the community. I look at it like our roots have taken hold and they've grown. And so we went from working out of coffee shops, out of our home office initially, me being a team of 1 for over 3 years, to now we have a Resilience Hub, which we had a ribbon cutting in 2024 in a partnership with the town of Windsor in Windsor, but it serves all of Sonoma County, where during Blue Sky Days, we provide training opportunities, disaster preparedness, 911 awareness, stop the bleed, the hands-only CPR, you name it, we teach it. We want the community to gain these skills. We want them to know how to take care of themselves, their family, and their neighbors. And so we're thriving in that way. But what we have done over the years is we have formed a network of partners that not only do we reach out when we need our partners to help us, but those partners reach out when they need us to come in. And so what I learned, first of all, after 20 years of being behind the phone and just being a voice that helps somebody, is that relationships are key. So boots on the ground is who we're always going to be. So we are in community. We go to food distributions to do disaster prep while people wait to get their food. Yeah. We talk to them about disaster prep, earthquake awareness, 911 awareness. So we take the information, even though we have a location, we still believe in going out to community. It makes it more accessible.
Well, one of the things that I learned through this work and all the imperfections and progress and setbacks and everything that we went through, and still to this day, is that the minute you look at your population, in this sense as a government official, and you say, we got it, they look back and they say, well, who is the we? And inherently, people don't just trust government right off the bat. No. They don't want to go to government offices. So if they're meeting with an organization or with an individual or somebody who's meeting them where they live rather than waiting for you to come into an office and take a number and wait to be seen, it's going to inherently be better. I think of it as like, in many ways, we can provide the structure and the skeleton, but what you have done as a nonprofit, but a community-based organization, not just a nonprofit, a community-based organization, is just the blood and the sinew of resilience. And so let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, if somebody wants to get involved, wants to learn how to get trained, wants to bring it to their school or their church or do whatever, how do they engage with you and Nuestra Comunidad?
The best way to engage with us is to visit our website, nc707.org. And you can also look us up on social media using NC707 or 707. And so we connect with community. We post all of our training opportunities on our website. There's an entire page with every workshop that's coming up. It's always free to community, and all you have to do is look at the time and date. Sometimes it requires registration if it's a limited space type of thing. Stop the Bleed, we max it out at 20 because we want everybody to get enough hands-on with the mannequins. Some trainings are just show up and we're here. But that's how you would tap in. We love volunteers because we're a very small organization. So when somebody reaches out and they want to volunteer, we let them plug in where if you have a talent, you want to help us with fundraisers, you want to come to events and help us with tabling, what do you want to do? And then we plug you in. But our website and our social media is the best way to connect with our organization.
Well, and you do work not just in Sonoma County, you're all the way up onto the Oregon border.
Yes.
You're part of a statewide coalition around preparedness. You're a prime contractor through the state. We have worked on countless things. You've gotten awards and funding from California State Association of Counties. Because it's a model of really of community-based progress and community-based resilience and stuff that the government can't do. But the government can fund you. Like I remember you and one of our first projects together was, I think I put $5,000 and challenged City of Cloverdale put $5,000 for us to do a $10,000 project in Cloverdale.
Yes.
And but I also know that people like you and individuals who are entrepreneurial, and me in this regard too, is that we start by being bootstrappers. But the goal is at a certain point, you got to create process, procedure in a way that it's beyond just bootstrapping, because it gets exhausting, especially when you go through multiple disasters and you're like, oh God, we're just going to rally again. And because I just want to honor the fact that like I've been with you and seen you in, after that, those 2017 fires in 2019, running around with Kincaid and in Cloverdale, and food and clothing and other things and aggregating, all that. And then in COVID, when you and I started work together and started to translate, for everybody, and you're not, you can translate perfectly, but you're not, your goal has never been to be a translator. And then, but at the same time, you've kept your eye on the ball about building an organization that has stability and strength. And so let's talk about where we're at right now in our community. You're a vital aspect of our resilience. Earlier today, when you and I were prepping for this, we talked about the difference between being prepared and being scared.
Yes.
Can you talk about that real quick?
Yes. So oftentimes when we're in community and we start talking about disaster preparedness, people almost don't want to broach the topic. Yeah. They feel that by talking about it, it's almost like they feel like it's going to stir up too much. Or I hear all the time, well, it's very traumatic, but then they're afraid of it. And so when you take even simple steps, like what's your communication plan? Oh, how are you going to talk to your family, which is one of the biggest disconnects that we've seen. A disaster hits, you've never planned. How are you going to talk to the people looking for you that you're going to look for? Something that simple, doesn't require money.
Where are we going to go?
Where are we going to go? How are we going to meet up?
If we have to go south, where do we go? If we have to go north, where do we go?
And how are we going to meet up? Because most of the time, families are not going to be together when something happens.
If the grid drops like it did in 2017 and we don't have any cell coverage, how are we going to be in touch with each other?
Exactly. So what I tell people, it's about muscle memory. So if you sit down with your family and you come up with a plan, you talk through what you're going to do, how you're going to communicate, then your brain is going to remember that by practicing it, by talking about it. And that does ease your mind. What I find after any of our workshops or sessions or informationals or coffee and conversations, we go about it different ways to talk about the subject so that everybody can find a way to talk about it that's comfortable to them. And if a coffee and conversation's more comfortable, then we invite people to come to those when we have them. But at the end of the day, the feedback is always, I feel so much better now that I have a path forward. People want a path forward. If you Google disaster preparedness, you get over 30,000 options of where to go to look. Yeah. That's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. It's almost like worse than not having any options.
And the other thing too is that there's this old philosophy. It's called the principle of subsidiary. And in government, what it means is that you should make your decisions and governance closest to the ground where people are. It shouldn't be fed trickle down. It should be there. And it's the same thing with this. They need to look at a community partner, somebody who's at their school, a course that's being taught, or down at the senior center, something that's close, not far away, right? So the biggest thing, you rally also your resilience and to make people feel prepared, not afraid, with some simple things. One is a plan, another is a go bag. How do you focus on what people really need to be strong in this world of uncertainty?
We give them the 5 basics, make sure you're connected to alerts so you know what's going on. Make sure that you know your evacuation zone, you have your go bag, your stay home box, and what is your evacuation plan? Yeah. Those are very basic things, and none of that.
What's your stay at home box?
My stay-at-home box is like, what are you going to have at home? Because some disasters, instead of evacuating, are going to tell you to shelter in place.
Yeah.
But imagine if your electricity and the gas go out. If it's a massive earthquake, that is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you have enough shelf-stable food in your home that if you cannot leave, you can survive for 3 to 7 days?
How long should you be able to survive for with, because we're not talking about somebody who stockpiles and has an underground tunnel system and is preparing. Yeah. But like, what should I have at my house?
3 to 7 days is
food and water.
Food and water. Food, water. Think about if your toilet doesn't work. People, it's all the little details. And part of it is bringing awareness. Once you flush your toilet, if the water's been turned off, guess what? Your little tank does not fill up anymore.
Yeah.
So what's your plan? Are you not going to use a toilet? You're still going to need to use a toilet. So, like, what is your plan? A bucket and a bag that you can secure? That's one way to do it. I've seen that. It works.
Yeah.
Or I spoke at a conference in the Midwest, and they have tornadoes all the time. And this woman shared that when they get a tornado warning, one of the first things she does is she fills all her bathtubs in her home with water. It's right next to a toilet because it's in the bathroom. And that's the water they use to continue to flush the toilet.
And they can boil it, too.
And they can boil it. They can bathe in it. They can use, And so that's the first thing that they do. And I thought that's brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
We can do that in California too. And even though we're not having a tornado, if you don't have access to water, you have tons of gallons of water right next to your bathroom. At a minimum, you can continue to use your bathroom.
This is a perfect segue because it was what we were going to segue to, but we've done it naturally. So we have these disasters we've gone through, fires being the most fiery, the most getting burnt out. There's nothing like it. That intensity of that moment. And I'd put that on the having traveled to other disaster communities too, is these fires, these tornadoes, these things, these wind-driven events that turn something from a natural issue into a full-blown disaster are a whole different deal. We've also gone through floods, remarkably. We live in one of these areas that floods more than anywhere else in the West Coast. But the pandemic. But I want to go back to one thing that I think we all need to be prepared for, and we have practice going through it, and that is not having electricity.
Yes.
So we had, after our fires in 2017, and then even after before 2019, but after, we had these public safety power shutdowns. The grid wasn't in a microgrid area like it is now, and so when we'd shut down, or the utility PG&E would shut down for high winds, we'd shut down basically our entire population. And it's amazing how dependent humans are on electricity.
Yes.
And how, as you say, like assumptions, like, wait a minute, my water's not going to work if I don't have electricity, or even though I have a gas stove, it might get cut off. Yeah. Or my CPAP machine, I don't have a battery backup for it, so I won't sleep. Or onward and onward and onward. You and I worked through a lot of these things. Can you talk about how dependent we are versus how prepared we are as a community?
I think we've made strides forward because, unfortunately, like everything else, it becomes a lesson.
Yeah.
And then we develop best practices afterwards. If you're smart, you're like you said, you capitalize, you sit down and think about, what can we do in the future? Yeah. And I think that one of the things that we learned is, when they had that, after Kincaid, when the power shut off was going on, it was freezing cold.
It was.
And so even communities like Cloverdale that were not necessarily affected by the fires, now we had seniors who were cold, very cold, that didn't have what they needed, including electricity for their medical equipment that they needed. There was no food because their freezers were out, and now all their food had spoiled. Yep. And so it could create a disaster type of situation within a disaster already, you know? And so I think that what we've learned is that we need to think about in your everyday life, what are the things that you are dependent on, that if the electricity went out, you would not be able to use, and then find a solution for it. Small generators, power packs, you know, come up with a plan. And that's the biggest thing is when you sit down and really think through it, that's where the magic happens. There's no special formula. It's sitting down with your family, with your caregiver if you're older, and saying, if everything goes out, how
The
am I
planning
going to
creates the plan.
exactly?
You don't have a draft
no.
that's perfect. It's all about your life.
And then you practice it. You go over it and you tweak it. And once a year, you look at it again. When the time changes in our family, we sit down and look at our plan. Are there things that we need to change? Has anything been outdated?
Yeah.
All
Well,
of
for
that.
instance, I came back home today. I've been doing some family travel, and I got back home this morning, and the power's been out at my house from about 7 a.m. to about noon. And I got back at about 8 a.m. And it's like, I just realized, like, it's been a long time. I haven't even talked to my kids about that. You know, they don't know that, like, this stuff doesn't work. Or what do I do? What do I do? I'm bored. What do I do without the electricity? It's like, well, you know, a lot. But we've gone through this. So so this is a funny thing because there's a couple ways we could thread this together. But the first one is, since you already talked about earthquakes, I want to remind everybody that, you know, we've done some workshops on earthquakes in the area. You also lead a big effort called the Big Shake, which is a earthquake preparedness thing. And here in this area of Sonoma County, but really Northern California, we always talk about San Andreas, but it's really what they call the Richmond Fault that connects with the Rogers Creek Fault. And the biggest thing that we've always been told by the National Geological Survey Office anyways, is that when we get a big quake that affects the Bay Area, the biggest thing that we're going to have to deal with is being alone for the first 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be so many resources that are needed in the Oakland, East Bay, San Francisco area that we're going to have to rely on what's already here. And we're going to have to assume that we're not going to have electricity and we're not going to have resources for 3 to 5 to 7 days. So this ties in exactly with what you were talking about, right?
Yes. And that's why having like a supply, your stay home supply, is essential. Because whether you're leaving and you need to take some stuff with you with your go bag, if you're stuck at home because there's an earthquake, what's going to happen is all of those big trailers that supply our grocery stores are not going to be coming through. Yeah. So there's not going to be a renewing of resources at grocery stores. And that's assuming grocery stores are even up and functioning. But if the Bay Area is that affected, that means that we're also going to have effects here with the electricity, possibly gas will be turned off, water mains might be affected, all of those things. So do you have enough supplies at home? And so it's critical because the disaster in itself almost doesn't matter what it is as long as you have the supplies and you've prepared yourself. So if you have 7 days worth of food that is shelf stable, then you're going to have 7 days, whether it's an earthquake, a flood, or something else.
And even if you don't have water saved these days, like I have a camping system that's a life straw system that I can go in. The Russian River's right next to me. There's creeks all over the place. Like you can do this stuff. Yes. And it's, I think it's, you know, we're going back in on high level, concrete, philosophical and others. But I think the thing for all of us to realize is once again, use organizations like Nuestra Comunidad, contact the county, figure out these things. As you said, your top 5 that you're going after. But make sure you just talk with your family. Make sure you do it. Like I'm just sitting here right now, I'm talking to you, but I'm gonna go home and talk to my kids because we had the power off today and I need them to know what's going on if I'm not there. Right. And I'm just realizing that. And I got to go check my, my gutters to see, cause I've been gone for a couple of weeks and I don't know how many, stuff ups there waiting to get burnt. So, so let's kind of sequence a little bit going forward and kind of tie this together. We're stronger than we've ever been. We're more resilient than we've ever been. The systems and the partnerships and the interconnectedness is, at the same time, the community is battle hardened. And yet at the same time, there's so many who are just so busy living their lives that they don't know how to do all this. A way you can start is basically make sure you know your neighborhood, map your neighborhood, We've worked with groups that do community planning. We see this throughout the county. We support it. We process it. It's really about knowing that you live in risk and not avoiding the conversation. That's what I like. I think that if the world would be a better place if we just grew up and had the conversations we needed to have. Like even once we get sick with our parents or our kids,
And
where
having
do
that
I want to live?
Yeah. And I think one of the things at the beginning that I think made NC who they are in a sense is like I'm very honest in conversations. When I have workshops, I'll be the first one. As a 911 dispatcher, I was considered a first responder. And I'm very clear with the roles that everybody has in this. This is disaster preparedness is also the community owning a part of it. Because in that moment at the 911 center, at a certain point, the system was working as it was designed. The flaw was in the whole design of the system, is that it's not meant to be able to sustain that kind of traffic. 211 at that time was ran in the county, by county employees that were also affected. So nobody showed up to answer 211 because why? They were also affected. So those are all lessons that we learned. But I always tell people, honestly, during a disaster, the system itself is not built to be able to help every single person. And so as a 911 dispatcher and first responder, there is nothing more that we want to do than to help each person. But we know that that's not realistic. So being honest with community, they're still under the understanding that somebody's going to come help me, even today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think being straight with them and saying, no, that's not going to happen.
If we could build systems to manage those, well, there's no way you could build a system because it would be too costly to keep those people on staff all the time. That kind of a surge that it takes is just out of this world. I think the other thing I always try to remind people is here's a couple reasons why when you're thinking about this issue, why you don't have to be as afraid, or ways for you to be prepared without being kind of schizophrenic about it. Number one is that if we have red flag warnings, which means, a combination of really fire, not just fire weather watch, but fire weather, high winds, low relative humidity, all kinds of stuff ready to burn, the conditions are there to pop. It's a different scene if you smell smoke and there's a fire during a red flag condition as opposed to a normal day. Even if it's 5, 10, 15, 20 miles an hour winds, there's a difference there. Second thing is people can always anticipate that we will use the alert and warning systems and that we will evacuate places, even though that is hugely disruptive to people's lives, rather than ever get back into a situation where we're knocking on doors and trying to remove people during the middle of a blaze, right? That kind of preparedness from an emergency management side is paramount. The other thing is that you'll know that it won't just be people parachuting in who do this emergency management. You will be served by the community. You will be served by Nuestra Comunidad. You'll be served by the partners at Catholic Charities. You'll be served by our folks at the La Cruz Roja, Red Cross, and others, as opposed to people flying in, because we are a community that takes care of itself. If I can, I want you to make it, just for a moment here, is, you and I were talking about your family. Your husband's involved in this.
He's our co-founder.
One of your sons works and manages up north. You have two amazing kids who are in college, and I've seen them at
they were voluntold.
They were voluntold. You've really embraced this as a family. So you're not just preaching. What would they say if I was talking to Mitchell and Maya about life and resilience and things?
That community matters.
Yeah.
That people's lives matter. That looking at people in other circumstances and trying to help their situation matters. For me, I never dreamt in a million years that I would be doing this work. I didn't even know what a nonprofit was, and I was already wanting to become one. But I feel like this was an idea bigger than myself. This was a calling bigger than myself. And as hard as I have to work, and my kids, when I started this, they were very, very young. They just went into college, dragging them out to events and helping us table because we didn't have a team, But it really, they got to see the biggest lesson that I want them to take out of it, and that I hope that anybody listening to this takes out of it, is that you can make a difference. You yourself, if you see something missing in community, if you see a disparity in community, you have the talent and the ability to change that.
Yes, you do.
You really do. I was a 911 dispatcher by career, and I loved my job. I never imagined where this would go, but the need was there, and I knew that.
Was there.
I knew that.
Yep.
And the willingness to step into something like that alone will power the work. And so I see it every day. I'm inspired by community. When we have one of the things that we really strive for with Nuestra Comunidad is that we listen to community. So when we have workshops, we make it very much interactive, and we recognize the value and learned experience from our community.
Yeah.
And so when
you're not just teaching them, you're not just plugging the matrix in and giving them emergency management. You're learning from them what the needs analysis are of the community. How can you change?
And then I'm learning from them.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll teach about what to put in your stay home box, and somebody will say, well, what about this? Simple stuff, but because of their background, it's something I had never thought about. It's now a gem that I can share with somebody else.
Okay.
And so I never feel like I'm a teacher. I'm a learner.
Yeah.
You know, and so by being able to embrace that, we're growing with the community, which I think is why people feel comfortable coming to our hub, coming to our trainings, because they see that.
I just think it's also cool that for the most part, what I've seen in my life here is a lot of organizations that have English names that serve the Latino community. And what we have here is an organization with a Spanish name, Nuestra Comunidad, that serves everybody. That doesn't just serve the Latino population, it serves everybody. You're out there teaching kids, you're with elderly, or with everybody. And I just want to thank you for what you do. So as we kind of sum this up, let's do like a little bit of a lightning round and go through some stuff. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Ready?
I'm down.
Okay. First thing, what's in your go bag that would be different from other people's?
Extra underwear.
Yes.
Having worked at a lot of the evacuation centers and helped with them, I recognized that it was the last item people were donating.
Yeah.
And everybody coming there needed it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to put like 8 pairs of underwear in my go bag. So
my son, the first time we went camp, took him to an overnight. It was up at these tents at Safari West, and we had him back on his own, and he came in and he had 15 pairs of underwear, he had a brick, and he had a mallet. And I was like, okay, well, they talk about priorities. Okay, what's the biggest myth about emergency preparedness?
That's expensive.
Ooh.
That it's expensive to do the things you need to do.
Yeah.
Because you can do things little by little, even your stay-home box. Every time you go to the grocery store, grab 1 or 2 cans. Before you know it, you'll have more than what you need. You don't have to do it all at once. You can put things together from what you already have. You know, it's not expensive.
Yeah.
It can be if you allow it to go that way, but it's not.
What do people forget when
Their
they
medication.
evacuate?
Medication, having extra medication in their go bag, in their car with them. I think medication, important documents.
Important documents.
Yes.
Your marriage certificate, your kid's birth certificates.
Insurance with
you
the
should have
policy
not
number.
just a bunch of files. You should have like something like my wife put together when we started to go through evacuations is like, here's like Jimmy, like here's our file cabinet. And what we would do when we'd get evacuated is we'd load up both cars and we'd go park them in an industrial area where there was not, like, even if the fire came over, we know like the car's not going to get burnt down.
Yeah, no, that's smart. And documents are huge, huge.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have we seen people in these local assistance centers afterwards, like going to try and find a driver's license or a document or a deed of or a marriage certificate to prove whatever it was.
And if they have insurance, some of the times without those documents, they don't even know their carrier, the policy number, all the things that will get you going on recovery. It takes them longer because they don't have that information.
So I'm going to say this next one in a positive way because it shows we still have more work to do. What percentage of people in our community are prepared?
About 40%.
Yeah.
If that,
Yeah.
which is crazy because all the things that have happened.
Yeah.
But when we do workshops, one of the first questions I'll ask is raise your hand if you've gone through and done a preparedness plan or you have a plan. And sometimes it's great results. We have 70 or 80% of the participants. They just want to learn more, but they've done it. And sometimes we have nobody that has actually taken the step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I would say it's ironic because I don't even know what the number would have been if I would have asked you that before the Tubbs fire, because I think in one way nobody was prepared for that, nobody. But on the other side, there was such a degree of complacency and false confidence in the system that some people would say, "Oh yeah, I'm prepared," right? Or we're prepared.
And I
Are you
think it's
guys?
happening again because
I
we
do too.
haven't had a fire for a couple
It's the
years.
biggest danger.
And people
Yeah.
are starting to feel like in conversation, like, oh, we're good.
Oh, that
you
was a
know?
cycle.
Yeah.
You're like, no,
yeah.
no,
So
it's
I
not.
see it happening again
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Favorite place in Sonoma County to hang out and relax?
Bodega Bay.
Ooh.
I'm an ocean girl, so.
Ooh. Also, ironically, the place where everybody left and went to when the big fires came, and one of the things we had to deal with, which is a lot of Spanish speakers, Spanish language first individuals, is lack of confidence in the system, not going to our evacuation areas and going out to the beach because I'm gonna go get next to the water.
Yeah.
This thing's burning us down.
Yeah.
I don't think we can overstate how much it was like a fog of war situation in our community when that happened. Everybody was confused. People were wandering all around the place, roadblocks in some places, but you could still get into zones. It was, anyways.
It's almost like you see those movies, and we all kind of relate. We see these movies; they seem post-apocalyptic. I'm not saying that's what it was, but it was a degree of that.
Yeah, it was.
Driving through Coffee Park, it felt surreal.
I remember when the cleanup was going on and they had loudspeakers all over the area, and it had that same kind of thing. It was like, people can visit their ash houses in between 9 a.m. and noon. Lunch will be served at noon, right? Because you had all these. It was just an eerie thing. What's the proudest thing for you about Nuestra Comunidad right now?
I think
What's something that filled you up with pride?
Opening the Resilience Hub, I think the ribbon cutting really, it literally brought tears to my eyes. And most of it was the way people showed up on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
We had partners, other organizations, first responders, and we had so many community members that had been involved with us to some capacity or other that showed up, that I remember I looked up and I couldn't believe, I felt supported.
Yeah.
And I think that it just goes to show that relationship. There's no shortcut to building a relationship with your partners or with the community. And through many years of continued effort to build those relationships, in that day, I felt like I saw a version of that, with everybody showing up to see our new center, to see our new home, something that we have. That was a vision from the beginning, to have a resilience hub. So in that moment, a vision came to fruition, and I got to share it with the people that mattered most, which was the community and our partners.
I want to thank you dearly for calling me in over the years, and many times challenging me to meet you in that vision. And it's just been an absolute deep honor to become friends, but partners in progress.
Thank you. I think you had a saying, relentless progress.
Imperfect progress.
And I really took that to heart, because sometimes it felt like we may went backwards a little, and then we would push forward again.
Yeah.
And so you inspired me to keep pushing.
Yeah.
Your belief in our organization, your willingness to come in and support and help, that inspired me, because I felt like that's one of the first times I saw it was real, because somebody else believed in it too, not just me.
I tell people that leadership is infectious, but only if you share it, which is kind of a joke about the pandemic and all those masks, but it's true. A lot of people who are in leadership positions, they don't share it. And really good leadership is about finding leaders in the community and taking the gas tank and putting it in the engine, or putting air under the wings, or whatever it is. So, I just thank you, and I'm looking forward to going to the fair. So blessings to you and yours, and thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, you want to learn more about Nuestra Comunidad or NC, visit our website, nc707.org, and I hope to see you in one of our workshops.
Onward and upward.
Thank you.
Thank you.